have remarkable perseverance that you've been here now for the third hour. I'm impressed, very impressed. And thank you that you care about these things, that you care about God's mission and our part in it. So, like I said earlier, one of the best ways we can do that is Norman Commission Conference. Not only our own participation, but our inviting others from our churches, encouraging them to be here and to be a part of it. So this workshop is focused, we tried to get some different foci in our workshops to help bring the issue of participation in God's work in the world from a few different angles. And this one is about mission education and mobilization in our churches. I'm the one who said, let's do this title out of our coordinating team, because I feel this is so much a part of my experience. This is why I'm passionate about God's mission. I'm passionate, and this is my brother's story too, and my two sisters who aren't ministers, but they're engaged in God's mission too, and like many of you. It began with our parents, right? For many of you, it began with your parents. What better way to begin than that, to have it reinforced in the home? But why were my parents passionate about God's mission in the world? Because my church had first things first. And we lived right next to the church. So you always ended up there. We never weren't there for worship. But it's the church that knew what was of first importance. And I'm sure that's a big part of why each of you are here, is because you recognize that too, and if it's not in your church, you want to help it be in your church, or help it to be more so in your church, because every one of our churches can always be more centered on our essential task as the sent people of God. And I'll tell you the first way I knew that my church cared was that, well, before I go into this, I am going to tell the story a little bit, but Frank Dimmick and Sharon Curry and I are doing this. We're each kind of talking out of our experience and sharing some things from our own experience, and some of it will overlap a little bit, and then we want to get your experience. So I want to get through mine fast and my little list that I'll put up there, and then we'll keep going, because each of you has something to offer here too. I knew it was important in my church because I'm going to call this the predecessor to children's church in the congregation I grew up in. Because remember, we're talking about the 50s now, okay? Children's church wasn't a big thing at that point. But the new pastor had a children's sermon every week. And once a month after the children's sermon, us kids went downstairs for Junior Missionary Society. Anybody here participate in Junior Missionary Society? All right, a few of you come out of the old United Presbyterian Church of North America, where that was a standard in most congregations. The denomination that founded this conference. And this conference was founded, do you remember the purpose? Do you know the purpose? It was for mission education. That was what it was about. It was about educating people to go back home to their church. Jenny was talking about delegates. To go back home to their church and really help to lead the way in mission education in their congregation. And at that point in time, the United Presbyterian Church was the highest per capita giving denomination in the United States for global mission. No wonder, because it was being reinforced and encouraged at every point. I don't remember any of those stories from Junior Missionary Society or any of the lessons, but this is what I knew as probably a 5-year-old when I first started to go there, was that mission mattered in the church, that it was a priority, that it was at the center. And that just kept getting reinforced all the way through my growing up. And I could talk about many of the ways, but rather what I'm going to do in my little time is to talk about things that I integrated as a pastor as I sought to bring mission education into the congregation I was serving, 2 different congregations over 24 years. And the first, and what I say is the most important thing for a church about mission education and mobilization to be a church on mission is for the pastor to be on fire for global mission, or for the whole mission of the church. But, you know, global mission, if people aren't engaged in global mission, they're not fully on. So that's kind of the measure. How many of our pastors are not really engaged? It's not really something they're passionate about. That's why I went to Pittsburgh Seminary. When I took the call to be director here, I took a joint call to be at Pittsburgh Seminary, to bring that missional presence into the seminary and the formation of pastors. And that was such a privilege to do so. But here's the thing. If your pastor isn't on fire, then you've got an action plan when you go back, right? How am I going to befriend my pastor in a way that helps my pastor to see things more broadly? It might just begin by asking, would you preach on this passage or on this theme? Because that's part of where it begins, right? If our pastors aren't preaching regularly on mission themes from the Bible, then the message doesn't get through. So the first point I'm going to make is conversion of our pastors. And I'm going to put you as members, if you're members, on, in responsibility for that. And if you're a pastor instead of a member, I'm going to say, look at colleagues and who can you put your arm around and say, what are you doing with mission? Are you preaching on these things? Or some way, however, we can come alongside and encourage. Number 2 is we began doing a regular mission study at every session meeting. A biblical passage about God's mission in the world for our devotional passage at the session meeting. And not only that, but the mission committee did it. And then you know what the mission committee did? The mission committee went around and visited every other committee in the church and said, how is mission at the center of what you're doing with your responsibility? Because really, right? Shouldn't all of our committees be focused on God's mission? And so everything that we do should point towards God's mission and upbuilding that mission. And so think about that, about how you bring other committees on board. And then of course, the regular mission highlights that you can do, and I imagine many churches do a mission highlight about the missions that you support. Did that. But if you're going to do it really well, learn from Michael Ludwig over here, because he does videos for his congregation. You want to say anything about Michael? What you do is just incredible for highlighting the mission of your church.
I don't know what else to say other than people really respond when they see pictures or video of, the people that that your church is connected to. And so I have had so many people come up and say, oh, I didn't know we did this, or, oh, that's really interesting. I want to be connected more to this. And then just getting up there and saying an announcement about what we're doing.
Yeah.
They don't have to be long.
Yeah.
It's like a commercial.
Where are you getting the footage? Are you going out when your congregation goes out and you're getting all the footage? Or are you getting them from missionaries? Where's the footage coming from? Because I've tried to do this and I'm not finding footage.
Yeah. That's a difficult part. It's a lot easier for the local missions that we're connected with, but sometimes it's just simply me searching for photographs that go along with the story, and show several photographs while we're talking about it. But there's also opportunities where we've asked some partners, can you send us, you know, a 2-minute video of this hardware store that we helped you open, or what the hardware store is doing, that where it doesn't have to be a really insightful interview, it's just some footage to give people understanding, and you can then talk over it for 2 minutes about what they're doing.
There's a playlist on our YouTube channel that you went to look at them, for example.
Yeah, and Michael's really good at putting these together, so he'd be glad to help you learn how. Now, go ahead, Jim.
Our mission partners are eager to do this, and they're very capable. In a lot of cases, mission partners I'm partnered with, their capability of providing resources is much greater, and they're more than eager to supply it to you.
Yeah. And even in our day, you can sometimes Zoom an international partner and have them right there present. Yes, Don Stanley.
There's an organization called Voice of the Martyrs,
Yes.
and they have a prayer site, ICommitToPray.org, and it's updated weekly and gives a photo and a very brief 10 or 12 sentence summary of how a particular person, family, organization in a particularly oppressed area is being victimized because of their faith. And our church does that as a prayer focus every Sunday morning.
Very good. Yeah, helping us to make a nice transition, because I got to keep us on the move here, so you guys get a chance to, from the highlight to the prayer, coming back to that. We all know that things begin in prayer. That's why the With You Always movement is saying, you know, pray. Start there. That's why we brought Sharon on board to do all this prayer, to lead us in this prayer, to kind of really focus in, because renewal begins in prayer. But renewal in the congregation as well as renewal denominationally. So think about this, all the ways that you can incorporate prayer into the life of your congregation. One is, when that mission committee went around and said, how are you, keeping your focus, how are you contributing towards the mission of the church here? They said also, well, you always open your meeting in prayer, right? How about volunteering for one of the mission partners that we work together with and praying for them each month when you have your prayer at the beginning of your meeting? There you go. It's a way in which some part of the church, the choir, the committee, whatever group that meets, Bible study groups that meet, ask them to adopt someone for prayer. Another way is that just how many of you have sharing of joys and concerns each Sunday? Many of us do. In that time, something can be lifted up. Or just, regardless of whether you have that, the pastor can incorporate something that every week there is an element of praying for God's work in the world, and that the good news of Jesus might go out. And then finally, and I shared this real briefly in the workshop that Jen Haddix did the other day, of a reverse prayer offering. We did it originally numerous times in the church by cutting up the old mission yearbook of prayer. We don't have that resource. That was really easy when you just had to do that. Now you might have to work a little harder to get those prayer items together, to get them. But print them up, pass them out, and as a part of the sermon that day and a part of the commitment you ask people to go with, don't you charge people when they go every Sunday to go and do what the sermon's been about, right? Well, go and do. For the next 30 days, will you pray for whoever was on that paper that you took out of if you do anything for 30 days, that sometimes sticks longer. For our daughter Rachel, who was in 3rd grade at that time, and pulled out something from the mission yearbook for Presbyterian in the Midwest, I don't remember, and something they were doing locally. 3 years later, she was still praying every night for that same presbytery mission. You know? That takes roots. And that's what we need to consider. How do we help that to take root and really be ingrained in the lives of people? My final thing is in turn back to the Children's Church, the Junior Mission Society, the Missionary Society I talked about. That society isn't anymore, but how about if we find ways to incorporate a once-a-month mission lesson into the Children's Church program, right? And there are a multitude of curriculums out there. You don't have to even create your own thing. You can, of course, but also they're out there. I just went on yesterday and looked, and there were quite a few that I thought, well, this would work. I could put that in if I were leading such a program. So think about that. Incorporate that. That's how it gets ingrained in the life of the church. All right, I'm passing the torch. Who am I passing to? Frank, you next. And my mobilization hint is simply come to the Wilmington Mission Conference. All right.
Good afternoon. I'm Frank Dimmock. I was a mission co-worker for about 3.5 decades with PCUSA. Then I spent 3.5 years in Louisville as a catalyst to alleviate living poverty. After getting up on that in 3.5 years, I joined the Outreach Foundation for another 7 years as their Africa person. I have an African family, and it's been my life and my joy to work with partners throughout Africa. This is the 5th of the With You Always workshops, and hopefully it's sinking in. You know, we learn by repetition. A lot of what we're going to say has been said before. We want to strengthen some of those ideas. My first slide has been up here for 30 minutes, so I'm sure you've memorized it. But basically, I only have 2 slides. So basically, Don asked for some nuts and bolts ideas about mission education and networking. Well, I'm a numbers person. My training's in public health and epidemiology, so I tend to analyze things. And networking is one of the things that I think we all agree needs to be done. We've got mission networks in 9 countries in Africa and other countries around the world. We've got presbyteries, 160-some presbyteries, 164 presbyteries, and probably a third of them, or maybe more, are involved in some kind of a partnership globally. Then we've got churches, many of your churches who have partners, and I want to call them companions as well, around the world. And so my question is, who's doing what where, and how can we work together? Because we know we're better together. We've had workshops on that, we've had conferences on that. So as Presbyterians, we want to collect this information in some kind of a database and map it. Those of you who like spatial things and maps, remember the old paper maps, you can look at presbyteries that are involved in different countries. Then you can put a layer of mission networks. You can have a layer of churches that are involved or engaged with mission workers. You can look at these agencies that were here in the last hour who are taking trips, leading trips to different places, and somehow try to network together so that we can support mission workers who have a calling to go to a certain place like Costa Rica, and the presbytery that's trying to support them, they need a little bit more money, but there's other people around the country that can give to that. And together we can make this happen. I'm hopeful. Hope is one of my favorite words, and it's the word that I use most often in my work now that I'm semi-retired with refugees from South Sudan who are in Ethiopia. A couple of ideas. Communication is key. Communication has changed during my lifetime as a mission worker from a 5¼ floppy disk and fax machine to internet and websites. So the need to communicate completely and effectively through stories and letters. In the early days, it was the Missionary Correspondence Program, MCP. And every quarter, as a missionary, we had to write a letter back to the home office about what we were doing, how we were engaged. And mission workers have continued to do that. Co-workers have continued to do that up until last year. So letters and stories from the field. This is not only mission workers, but it's also it's information from partners, how they're engaged in different projects. Minutes or moments for mission using lectionary mission stories, and I'll say more about that on my second slide. Mission advocates at Presbyterian network level. I remember from Western North Carolina Presbytery, there was a woman who was a part-time mission advocate. So she was connected with the Presbytery. She was given a stipend for communication, and she would attend all the Presbytery meetings. And she, for one thing, would give a minute for mission at the Presbytery meeting. I mean, we're talking about doing it in churches, but your Presbytery, that's a way to share it with all the churches in the Presbytery at one time. So we have mission advocates, and these people were really critical in trying to keep the churches in the Presbytery informed about what's going on in mission and with our global partners. Invite a mission worker to share. We've all done itineration. It's not just for raising funds for the work that we do, but it's really to pass information, to be part of an education program, to let churches and people know. Let's see. I need to find your cursor, Don, and close this. And then go to the second slide.
It's on there.
See the cursor.
You already did it. You're on the second slide.
Is that your second slide up there?
That's it.
That's it, yeah, that's the second slide. Good. A couple more ideas of learning about partnerships or companionships that your presbytery or your church has. Many of you have church partnerships. You're part of a presbytery that has a presbytery partnership, as I mentioned. Who is the contact person? And get that information and share it. Connecting with other churches in your presbytery that support specific church partners and workers. Find a mission network that is connected with a region or a country or a partner that you're interested in. There are 9 of them in Africa, 9 mission networks that are pretty active, some more than others. Other parts of the world, there are a few mission networks as well, and I encourage you to seek that out, seek that information out. And I think what we'll do with you always is to try and collect and disseminate some of that information through a contact in our website. So consider a vision or a learning trip. You know, the trend the last 20 years has been short-term mission. And so churches send a youth group somewhere to paint a hospital ward. Well, it needs to be more than that, but there are ways to connect and to follow up on groups that have gone on short-term mission and connect them with a partner and with a network that has worked with that country or with that global partner to do follow-up. When I was in Louisville and my wife was a missionary in residence there, she put together, she compiled the 3-year lectionary series with mission stories. So every Sunday in that 3-year series, there's a mission story. And it's based on some of these mission correspondence letters. A lot of it's pretty historic. And I'll give it, the cover looks like that. That's year A. There's A, B, and C. And I'll give an example of a lectionary story from this past Sunday, from Ordinary Time 16, July 19th. There are a series of scripture readings, and then the parable of the weeds was the one that was highlighted in this particular lectionary series. Following the reading of the scripture is a mission story, which was an interview with the former president of the Presbyterian Church in Rwanda about the 1994 genocide and the response of his church, the Église Presbyterienne Rwandaise, in healing and reconciliation between the victims and the perpetrators in that situation. The church played a leading role in Rwanda in helping to heal the consequences of that horrible event. And they establish unity and reconciliation commissions at presbytery level. I think there were 7 presbyteries in Rwanda at that time. So each one established this reconciliation commission and continue to work to reconcile beyond just the Presbyterians in that area, but in the country itself. Rwanda is the size of Maryland, but it has 1.6 million Presbyterians. PCUSA has 1.1, so they're larger than we are, even though it's just a dot on the map. But they're a very active partner. They're among many of our Presbyterian partners that I'm aware of in Africa that are doing great work. They have 3 hospitals, they have over 100 schools, they have a seminary, they have a university, so there's a lot happening with many of our partners, and there are ways that we can get engaged, whether we're ordained or teaching elders or teaching in a seminary, or we've had lots of visitors over the years who are builders, architects, doctors, nurses, teachers, a variety of disciplines to come and help and work alongside our partners. And it's, yeah, I like the term companion as much as I do partnership, because I think a lot of what's needed is accompaniment and working with our partners in terms of encouraging them, and it's mutual. I am inspired every time I work with the refugees from South Sudan who have nothing, and yet they're joyful, and they're worshipful, and they're certainly resilient, and I've learned a lot from them. We have trainers in trauma healing in their language, and they carry on doing that work. But our partners all over the globe are engaged in some incredibly important and wonderful ways to expand the kingdom and to share the love of Christ. But there are a lot more ideas, and you all, I'll open it up to your ideas as well, things you've tried in your churches to help educate members of the congregation about the partnership, about what the opportunities are. George?
Yeah, I'll just mention something that's been important at our church. The partnerships inspire the most giving in our church, rather than just, there's nothing wrong with this, but just stories that just come to us from the outside that we have no connection to except what we read in the newsletter or just what's presented that Sunday. So our Service and Outreach Committee really focuses on the partnerships we have locally, nationally, and internationally. But then we did something during COVID that had a shocking result. We thought that the problems were going to be bigger than they were economically. So we were we got to step up and be representatives of Christ. So we researched what the needs were, and then we would communicate that need in a moment of permission for the first Sunday, and then the outreach offering, we just said we're not keeping it. I know not a lot of churches can't do that, but whatever was free will, we were just going to give away to whatever that need was. And it worked so well, we've continued it on since then, and it's that people, it's always a partner ministry, something that the church has a connection to. And our church is 1,000 members, but we only had $8,000 in free will offering before we started this. But since we started it, we had like 70,000 free will. A shocking result. And the other initial desire to do this was just to teach about stewardship, because people aren't pledging as much as they were. So we said we want to get them in the habit of giving. And it started that, and then COVID hit, which accelerated it. And so we made the choice to not keep any of it, and it quadrupled the amount of money that people were giving because they were giving to these partners. And then that feeds over into our relationship. So for what that's worth.
Yeah. Anybody else want to share an experience, an idea from your church?
I have a question, just for, I don't know if there are other small church pastors here. So I serve 3 small churches. And my biggest problem is just capacity. So it's like I'm looking for things that are almost on a silver platter, because I don't, with 3 churches, have time to search, assemble. Nothing obviously comes out of VA anymore, nothing comes out of the presbytery. So it's like, is there any sources of amalgamation of, to even find people that my churches might partner with? Because they haven't partnered with anybody for decades.
Have you asked among your members what their interest is, or if they have had a connection with a particular mission field or a person in mission?
They've had connections of people who died.
Okay.
And I mean, like if you go back to the 50s, they even had missionaries who were sent from one of the three congregations. But those people have faded from memory.
Jim?
Well,
For example, the Antioch partners right now have taken on, what, 4 couples? And some of those people are still looking for support. If you wrote the Antioch partners and said, we're interested in pairing up with a missionary, can you put us in touch with them? In a heartbeat, they'd probably give you several suggestions, and that would be a pretty easy way to connect with somebody. If you can make that personal relationship with an individual or couple, that's going to be huge.
Another idea might be Frontier Fellowship, I know, has an Advent calendar that you can get, and you could get some copies for all the people, and everybody in your church could read the Advent calendar, and it always focuses on mission. And that might be an encouragement to them. I mean, they probably don't have, maybe they don't have lots of money to give or anything or time to go, but they could begin to pray and they could begin to learn about the exciting things that are happening in the world right now.
So Antioch Partners, they all have resources for congregations or people you can talk to. 'Cause I've never heard about any of those until 3 days ago. And I've been in Presbyterian Church for 20 years. So,
Yeah, there used to be what was called Mission Yearbook of Prayer.
right, yeah.
And that was a great resource because it listed a number of partners from around the world and the co-workers who were connected with them, the kinds of projects they were involved in. So that was a great resource that unfortunately we lost. But
Years ago, Outreach Foundation and Frontier Fellowship sponsored a big conference in Peachtree. And people were asking for minutes from mission. And the outreach and us, we put together 52 minutes from mission that could be bulletin inserts. Now my church is still using bulletin inserts. That was used prominently back in, that was early 2000s. So.
well, this 3-year lectionary series is for every Sunday for 3 years, 152 or however many. And there's stories from mission workers, from partners, and that's available as well. Well, we can make that available. We could put a link maybe on our With You Always page. I got it electronically. It's big Word document, but that sort of thing could be helpful. Some of them are historic, missionaries from the 60s or 70s who no longer serve, but it gives a story of a day in their life or an experience that they've had and how that, and my wife put together this whole thing that is to be a companion to the lectionary that Sunday.
I think in the older days, the church used to have mission stories all the time. Missionaries would travel. I don't know that that's happening now. So I think that it's nice to have resources that can easily be used.
I think it's a great idea, and maybe we can, as With You Always, connect with networks and presbyteries that can help us collect some of that stuff.
Because young people don't necessarily have that vision or that excitement. The world to them is the news. Television.
Surviving field,
Yeah,
surviving.
yeah.
Don?
a question about feasting on the word. It's a 3-year cycle. Is there another 3-year cycle that will be coming out? Or would one have to go back and use that same 3-year cycle again?
Well, this is the only one at the moment. It was a good bit of work to pull all that
I'm
together
sure it
from
was.
mission letters and stories. But it gives us a start.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to necessarily match the particular Sunday. You can look through the series and get a mission story from another Sunday. But those resources would be very helpful. And I don't know if we, as With You Always, can be a clearinghouse or a receptacle for people who want to send in stories.
Yeah, we can do that. I would think that we could probably make a page that would have some
Links.
downloadable resources.
Yeah, in fact, there's some wonderful downloadable resources now on the webpage for With You Always.
The Office of Christian Formation has a lot of resources already done and ready to go that you can use. As far as your question, I deal with primarily small churches. 80% of my churches are less than 50 members. And I've got almost 40 churches. Asking someone in your congregation to find someone that you can be a partner with takes the burden off of you and involves the members of your congregation. And then they feel, then they're invested in it because they did the work, they did the research, they're excited about these people they found.
Don highlighted the importance of New Wilmington Conference as a place that has inspired young people in mission and so forth. I came out of the Southern Church, and Montreat has 6 youth conferences every summer. And there's great opportunities there. They have a college conference in January. We need to be there. We need to talk about missions at youth conferences whenever we can, whenever there's an option or a choice. We need to promote missions. They need to know. And unless they're, what did Jenny say? She gave four E letters. Exposure, education, exchange, and equipping. And those 4 are spot on, I think. That's how we get people engaged in working in global mission.
And one other way might be to look at your numbers, and if you've got folks who are, thinking a retired doctor, retired teachers, somebody who was in environmental science or something, farming, find a mission related to what their career was, that they may not be working anymore, they may still be, but they're passionate about medicine. So medical missionary, a dentist, nursing, there's a nursing school in Haiti that my church supports and works with. And it came out of the passion of a nurse who knew about it, somebody from the congregation. So what are their passions that link to maybe a mission in that field to find? And they would then lead it, and it wouldn't be burden on you. You would turn it over to them, and they would take care of the people.
Thank you. Yeah, as an example, we were in Malawi for 14 years and working with health. And there are 5 Presbyterian hospitals there. And they would love to have visiting specialists for a month or 3 months. Often people who recently retired and are still healthy and can come out and teach, if not do the work alongside.
Yeah, we did a little bit of what somebody said earlier about going to some of the different committees at the church and challenging them to do something mission-wise. So our green team that led the campaign to buy solar panels for our church connected with a mission, a women's school in Kenya to support them getting solar panels for their school for the women to save money and have consistent electricity on the campus. So their mission was green team things and stuff that they found in missions and partner with on that.
Yeah, so we'll try and collect some of these stories. I think they're great, and they should be shared maybe more broadly.
And a true partnership would be like bringing say a seminary professor from overseas here to teach for a year and sending one of the professors from the seminary here. And we need that because our seminary students aren't being exposed to missions.
Yeah, Don mentioned Pittsburgh, and I think it's one of about 3 seminaries in our denomination that have any kind of connection in world mission. But there was Reverend Dr. Silas and Josana, who came many years ago from Malawi, spent a year here. And there have been professors that have gone to Malawi, sort of that exchange idea, and I think it's very helpful.
Yeah, I mentioned that my Presbytery of West Virginia has a partnership with Neary Presbytery in Kenya. And interest in mission has been waning in our presbytery as well as in the denomination. One thing we're going to try to do, I think, is reconfigure the partnership so that actually fewer churches in the presbytery will be involved. It sounds counterintuitive in a way, but it's very hard in West Virginia to reach all the small churches around. And so if we have fewer churches taking a more prominent role, I'm hoping that will re-energize the presbytery as a whole somehow. So we get so it's fewer churches but more involved. And also my own church, so it sounds a little self-serving, but I get a little stipend when I go to teach in Kenya at the Presbyterian University of East Africa. And we have a fund that's set up for people who are working abroad. But if I can get myself appointed Director of International Mission in my church, that's kind of a grandiose title. But I'm hoping that will allow me to energize the church and churches right around. So maybe if some churches actually had somebody in that position, Director of International Mission, which might not really exist that much. Anyway, those are two ways in which we're trying to adapt to the loss of interest in denominations.
Thank you. Keep those ideas coming.
Well said, this new movement was started for mission education. Does anybody here not know perspectives in the world Christian movement? If you don't, ask Pam about it. This mobilization tool I know of changed my perspective in 1986. I had a mission vision coming out of South Korea that I thought was New Testament, seeing it from Genesis to Revelation. And the 74 was 50th anniversary of Perspectives. Ralph Winter started it, and right after he did that talk at the Lausanne Congress, the Billy Graham Congress in 1974, talked to me or talked to Pam about perspectives in the world Christian movement. This mission dies.
Thank you.
Hello. I guess by now everybody knows I'm Sharon Creed. If you are a church of less than 100 members, stand up. You've been sitting for a long time, so I thought maybe I'd give you a chance to stretch. Okay, if you are a church of less than 50 members, keep standing. I want you to know that even though you say you're small, and you don't have, let me see some of the other things I hear. We're too small. You can sit now. Wiggle, squirm, whatever you need to do to get some blood circulating. Even though you're small, I have two of my churches that are less than 25 members that are supporting former Peace USA mission coworkers. It can be done. But we need your ideas. I know we need to get the word out. Not everybody knows what happened. I had a long lunch with a very upset pastor a couple of weeks ago about that. You know, why didn't we know? So y'all can tell those stories when you go home. Share them with your friends, share them with your church members. Getting the word out, getting people to know about With You Always. We are not giving up. There's some ways, and I know especially for small churches, even big churches, pastors want a free Sunday off, don't you? What if I came to you and I had a bulletin, and it had everything that you needed for your worship service that Sunday, including the hymns, because that's my hardest thing to pick out, including all the lectionary, all the prayers, the prayer confession, everything in it. Your office staff just got a Sunday off, a week off, because all they have to do is print it. You get a week off because that same bulletin comes with a written sermon. And you don't have to preach it. You can, but you can give it to somebody else to preach. What's that saying that every elder should have a sermon in their pocket? Give it to them. Let them use it. Some other ideas I had were, besides giving the week off, because I know there's always, especially for you guys with smaller churches that depend on pulpit supply, or whoever can stand in the pulpit Sunday to preach, as the case may be, having those resources available. I can't count the number of times I get called on Thursday night or Friday night, or even 11 o'clock on Saturday night. Our pulpit supply can't show up, can you come preach for me? Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't, but that is something you could keep in your file. And I hope those are the kinds of resources that we can make available to you. I think you guys covered everything else I had about providing you with booklets with 12 months of mission prayers and children's sermons.
Yeah, but you're talking about providing them too, you know, so go ahead.
I'm talking about providing downloadable resources. We can prepare them. We need volunteers to help. We can access Frank's wife's amazing resources. I'm not above and beyond, what's it called, recycling ideas. The other thing that I think we have to really consider, and it starts with each one of you and each one of us, is we have to start feeding the pipeline. Tom talked about how he got interested in mission because of the Mission League. It was called Mission League in my church, and we started out at 3 or 4 years old chunking snacks in boxes to send to missionaries in faraway places that were a dot on a map. And then we grew, as we grew older, we got engaged in more local missions, and then we did have foreign missions come and speak with us. So all the way from the time we were big enough to stand up practically until we graduated from high school, we had mission as part of everything we did. My home church had this same philosophy. We didn't call it Mission League or whatever. It didn't really have a name. It was just a practice of the church. That last year we got a new director of Christian education, and our kids have been involved in mission all along until they got to be juniors and seniors in high school when we got the new DCE, who mission just wasn't her focus. This summer, I actually get to visit my home church, but the kids stopped me. They're in college now, and they stopped me and said, "Can we do another mission trip?" They got fed from the time they were little. So if we can start feeding that pipeline, because I'll take those kids on a mission trip. I told them, you know, you decide where you want to go, and we'll go. And they're old enough now that they're in college that I will take them to wherever Josh is working or somebody else. I would love to spend 3 or 4 weeks with them going from place to place so they get to see lots of foreign mission. Those kids and kids like them will become our next mission co-workers, missionaries, whatever we're going to call them, partners in mission. Working with young adult volunteers. You all have young adults in your presbyteries, in your churches maybe, that you can encourage, because once they get through with that, they've had a good exposure to mission work. And some will go ahead, if there's a pipeline for them to feed into. And so I want to encourage that as a way to keep feeding the pipeline, because if we don't feed the pipeline, we're not going to have them. And I've enjoyed hearing all of y'all's ideas, and I would love to hear if you have any more, and I don't have the time, so okay. Time keep for me.
Well, I listened to you, you know, talking about learning as a child, young kid, you know, through the church, the service mission, the mission trips. I've spent my career in higher education, and I a couple of times came here and did workshops on how to maintain your mission at the college and university level. So I would share that most colleges and universities, I mean, I know a lot of families here with their kids that go to small private schools that have an emphasis on mission. But a big state university, Michigan State University, will have an Office of Service Learning. And what we call ASP, Alternative Spring Breaks. And I've done 30-some of those with my students from the university doing mission. We call it service, and we term it a little different because we're at a state university, but we go out and do mission. Whether it's recovery from Katrina in New Orleans, whether it's taking pre-med students to an HIV AIDS residential facility for a week, whether it's taking building construction management majors on a Habitat for Humanity projects. There are ways, because sometimes at the college level that is lost. There's ways to maintain that through university clubs and organizations, but also just through service learning office and parts that universities offer. So for those with kids or church members who are hitting those kinds of things, encourage them to find those places.
Two things quickly. One, if you have a youth director who isn't promoting mission, most churches have to have an annual performance review.
Oh, she's gone now.
Okay. For
She
the
didn't
next,
last long.
for the next person, put that in their job description.
It is.
Okay. Second one, you talked about these resources, and I think they're great for want of a better term, supply preaching in the service. Long time ago, I read an article about supporting mission that said, Pastor, don't not be there when the mission speaker comes. Be there to show your support for the mission.
Absolutely. Part of where I was coming from with that comment is if you are a small church that does not have a full-time pastor, stand up.
A full-time?
Full or part-time, yeah.
Oh, part-time.
Well, you can
A
stand
third
up
of
too.
the time.
You're a third of the time, yeah.
Yeah.
You guys in this room are a small majority. I have 39 churches. I have 26 without pastors. So having someone with that emergency sermon is really important and exposes a church that may not get exposed to world mission in a new way. We've got about 10 more minutes, 5 more minutes, 7 minutes.
Inspired by,
Go ahead, James.
okay, inspired by what you said, to put arms around the pastor and say, what are you doing? The Christian educator and say, what are you doing? Why not ask our seminaries on what are they doing? Because there are some alumni here, governors here. We have every right and we have the responsibility of asking our seminaries what is it that they are doing. Not just mine, I mean all 10.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm being recorded, so that is one. The second thing is, when we have students from abroad in the seminaries, what stories do we need to look out from elsewhere? Why don't you ask them to come and tell a story about their church, Christianity in their world? At least once a year, congregation to invite an international student to come and be a resource.
It's a great idea.
I have a question.
Yes.
Just hearing about some of these churches that are almost stagnating, perhaps we should consider admission to the churches.
I actually wrote that down from somebody earlier in the week about sending pastors from large churches to small churches as their mission field. You asked another question earlier about how to engage people. We've got a couple minutes. I'm going to share a story about my friend Joe Patnance, because I think his story goes from the local level to the national level to the international level. Joe Pat had a little teeny tiny church at the end of a dirt road, and he had 9 members. A couple moved away, so he was down to 7. 2 died, so he was down to 5. Another one had to move away to be with their parent, closer to their kids so they could get the help they needed. They were down to 3 members, and they said, what are we going to do? And the old man with the cane leaned forward and he said, well, we can choose to live or we can choose to die. Who wants to lock the door for the last time? And everybody said, not me. So what they decided was, wherever they went in town, they were already active in the food bank, and they read story time at the library, and they mentored kids at the elementary school. They decided to wear their church polo shirt. And after a few weeks of doing that, all of a sudden, they had visitors. And people were stopping in the grocery store and saying, hey, what's your church doing? Because everywhere they went, they saw these shirts. There was only 3 of those people wearing those shirts. But people came because they wanted to be a part of a church that did something, that supported mission. And the last time I saw Joe Pat, he was so excited. He was just like bouncing for joy because he was going to do the first baptism he had done in 20 years. And he had welcomed 15 new members in this community of like 250 or 300 people. And he was doing a wedding. And he was just doing everything that a great big church would do. And he was so excited. But it came down to 3 people saying, I'm not going to be the one to lock the door, and wearing their shirts wherever they went. And if we wore our with you always shirts that we don't have.
Next on the project.
Next project, right? Or your church shirt, and people see you involved in mission. Those stories are going to carry from your local church to involving the bigger, broader global church. And so I want to encourage you, however you can, take our lessons, whatever, and our ideas that we've shared. Yes?
Yeah, I really like what you said at the beginning, Sharon, when you had people stand up that are in small churches. And I think lots of times folks in small churches think, well, we can do so little, so what's the point? And I'm in touch with a lot of partners. I'm the guy in our presbytery that organizes the money to go over every quarter, and I just have a lot of personal connections with the partners. And we used to give a lot more money than we used to. And so, as the person who sends the money over, it's kind of a source of embarrassment sometimes. And I can't tell you how many times they say to me, the size of the gift doesn't matter. Just the fact that we know we're remembered is so important to us. And I've come to feel that, what we really give folks when we come alongside them, even with small gifts, we give them hope. And we're involved with South Sudan, and if we're able to give those folks hope, they've got plenty of it, but when we come alongside, it builds it. That makes a huge difference. So don't think because you're a small church, you can't make a huge impact, because you will do. You will.
I'll tell you a story from South Sudan when I was serving there. The women of the church wanted me to give them a women's building. And I told them, I can't give you anything. I don't have any money. And they said, you're American, you're rich. And I said, no, I'm not. Because I am only here because someone like you, sitting in their church, put their offering in the basket on Sunday morning. And they said, somebody cares? And I said, yes. I can't give you a church, a women's building, but I can be here and sit with you because someone put their quarter or their dollar in the offering plate. And that meant more to them than if I had built them a women's building. So, I'm going to close with prayer. I guess we'll all be around if you want to answer questions. Because it's now 5 o'clock and I bet we're getting hungry. And who knows what the weather is out there. Anyway, let us pray. Just take a moment to catch your breath. Breathe in and breathe out. It's been a long and busy day, God. We've gone from place to place. Our heads and hearts and minds are full of the words that you have for us. We're bouncing with ideas. We have walking around with a million new questions that we didn't even know we wanted to know the answers to. We give you thanks for these times together, especially for these With You Always workshops, where we've been able to walk together, to hear stories, to share ideas, and make plans to move forward. We just ask that you be with each person in this room, and the ones that were with us earlier, and the ones that will be with us as we continue on the journey. The ones that are helping support our mission co-workers as they make plans for new lives. Maybe the same as where they were serving, maybe a different place, or you're calling them in a different way. Just help everyone know, Lord, you are with us always, and we are with you. And Jesus, help us go from this place in peace and compassion and understanding of the broader picture of things than maybe what we came in these doors with. In Jesus' holy name we pray. Amen.
Oh, you got it.
Yeah, I have a meeting.
Oh, okay.
And so I have to.